turn off the timer before it gets noisy.
Okay.
And let me welcome folks. Friends, it's good to have you here. My name is Stephen Fetter. I manage the United in Learning program for the General Counsel Office. And yet again, we're delighted to have you with us. I want to apologize for the difficulties you may have had in finding us tonight. The internet is jammed. And one of the issues we've had tonight, we signed into United in Learning and discovered that it wasn't responding. Not sure why. That's just life. And when we're done, I may be on the phone for a while with the tech help at the provider that hosts that for us. But in the meantime, we are here. We're broadcasting in Zoom. We've got 345 on the YouTube channel. We're delighted you're with us, and thank you for being a part of this. So Eric, let me invite you to step up to the plate one more time. My goodness, you're nimble. You sent me this PowerPoint just after, just about exactly an hour ago. I know you were honing it all day as the news trickled out of Ottawa, and so we're getting up to the minute stuff from you, and I'm so grateful for your time. Over to you and welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, and good evening, everyone. And I thought I neglected to do this the last couple of times, so I really just want to start with a quick land acknowledgement from where I'm broadcasting, which is Central Toronto. And we sometimes have a participative thing where we ask everyone to type in where they're from. I'll leave that up to you whether you want to do it. It does tend to blow up the chat box, and I'll be reading it later for any questions that we missed answering. So I just want to say that I acknowledge that the land I speak from is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And with that, we'll move to my traditional first slide. And Steve, if you could hit enter twice when you get there, so we'll have both parts. Everyone knows this, but I always try to remind financial people we tend to have a bias to jumping into problem solving or getting new information. And there's never been a time like this where we're called to be the church. So I just always want to take a breath and say that I normally never schedule a webinar for Holy Week, but these are extraordinary circumstances. So let's go to the next slide. Again, this is a bit of a carryover slide from before, again, emphasizing the delicate balancing act we have right now with trying to preserve cash, and for that matter, viability, financially speaking, and considering very difficult decisions like layoffs, for example, versus ministry being needed more than ever at a time like this, and all the exciting ways and creative ways that our ministers are finding to connect and reach out and deliver worship services, as Steve was just tonight before he came on. So next slide. So tonight I'm going to start with some mea culpas. We're moving so fast that some of the advice I've given hasn't panned out quite the way I would have liked, and I'll flag that and to say that we'll keep moving. There were some fairly significant announcements to the charity and nonprofit space just today, a couple of hours ago. So it's going to be, a lawyer friend sent me a note saying, be sure to stress that this is the best information we have available at this time. And for example, a number of these things still need parliamentary approval. So the government has announced it. I'm absolutely certain that parliamentary approval will be obtained, but there's my lawyerly caveat. I'll start with a bunch of internal considerations, and these are things that just arising from all the questions that have been pouring in over the last couple of weeks. And then we'll go over the details and give you some suggested to-do list. I think first and foremost, my advice there is going to be, let's all take a breath and observe Easter and observe Holy Week, and then get into the action plan next week would be my advice. Anyway, next slide, please. So the mea culpas. I gave some standard pieces of advice that I've been giving for years. The whole notion of trying to go to the bank and getting a line of credit or a bigger line of credit. And I said, oh, well, I'll just email over a guarantee. Well, for years that's worked. I mean, I haven't had to do it very often, but I literally could just send an email confirmation. They'd send me the forms. But credit is dried up, and the banks, most banks, are very resistant and very rules-based on traditional lending. And similarly, trying to set up a CRA, my business account, has been frustrating for some, particularly if they're already registered, but they don't know who the name on record is. And of course, the CRA office is closed too. So that just complicates it. So I have created work for a few people across the country. I suspect they might be on the line and they know who they are. And all I can say is I'm sorry about that, but we also helped advance the learning for the whole church. Next slide, please. So this is a repeat. We've been thrown a significant life preserver from the federal government, and today they ramped that up even more. Again, subject to government approvals and so on. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about internal considerations. First of all, there's been a fair number of questions, particularly for multi-point charges, but it also applies to single point pastoral charges where not all the folks that get paid from the pastoral charge are necessarily on payroll. So I explain this all the time to business and government, that our internal structures don't necessarily fit well with the, or are not necessarily understood by the outside world. So the federal programs everything hooks off where payroll is. Whatever number the payroll register has on the payroll register, that's where they're going to calculate subsidy. That's where they're going to calculate a bank account eligibility and so on. So it is going to be the pastoral charge that applies for wage subsidies, assuming that's where the payroll is. Sometimes a point within the charge will run the payroll and then charge everything back out to others. In that case, it would be that point and that charity that is applying for the various benefits that are available there. And similarly, from a payroll perspective, to apply for the loan, there must be at least a $50,000 payroll. And we believe that will be based on the T4 summary, and therefore might include something like a housing allowance with a part-time minister. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but again, it's the payroll register that drives all of this federal stuff. When we start talking about church backstop emergency funding, which will be a main topic next week, there we can organize around our own internal structures, and we don't have, we can understand that and don't have to explain it to anybody in the outside world. Next slide. So on the governance side, okay, wage subsidy applications are really an internal accounting matter to the pastoral charge. If there's any kind of approval that we're asking for, and we're strongly recommending it to you, it is to respond to an email that went out last night to all ADP administrators across the country, where we're asking for an authorization to have ADP basically do this for you, and further to have the work checked by the payroll experts at the national office. That means that there's a need to be very, very technical about where you send the authorization, what it says in the subject line, and so on. And if anyone, there may well be people on this call that didn't get the email, but go wherever you're from, check with your ADP administrator to make sure they did. And we'll get it out to, we'll send it out to more people if we need to. The loan application, though, is, as is in our tradition, any encumbrance of the property requires, first of all, a congregation approval and a region approval. And many regions have taken steps to do somewhat of an omnibus approval for this particular type of loan transaction. But do check with the region office to make sure you're set up to go. And the other constraint is that this is very much going to be an online process. The banks, there isn't a lot of loan, as I understand it, there won't be the normal credit risk stuff that gets us into all kinds of bureaucracy and eventually a failure to get loans. My understanding, this is really an expedited bailout type payment, if you will. Next slide. So in terms of communication, we have loaded a fair bit of general information and specific program information up on the website, and you can link it you can find it from the link provided here. That includes everything from the best practices in generosity, the various programs, and a whole bunch of sort of general type questions on how we think things are going to work. The only caveat I'll offer there is overnight, I'm going to email our head of communications with updates to the web because the government changed a few things today. Next slide. So the wage subsidy, there's some confusion about this, the business with the 10% and the 75%. And I want to stress that everybody is eligible for the 10%. And it's more immediate. You literally, as soon as you're ready to go and figure out what it is, you can start reducing the amount of money you're sending to Ottawa with each payroll. On the other hand, the 75% is subject to a revenue test, and you need to apply for it. Now, if you claimed your 10% and you're eligible for the 75% subsidy, then there'll be just an offset. It's sort of like if you were paying tax on in installments or something, you would have already received some of the money you're entitled to, so you would get a net number, or it would be adjusted afterwards. But all of that happens down the road. That 75% application process is going to take time. It's going to probably take something like 6 weeks at least to get that thing rolling. And each time you'll have to prove your eligibility.
So there's a couple of questions that have come in that are sort of specific to the 75%. People are wondering, 75% of what? 75% of the net pay to the employee, or the gross pay plus benefits? What's considered the payroll here?
I understand it so far to be the gross number. That would be sort of box 14, summarized over and over again, which would include then any taxable allowances. The one that's a little open is if someone's in a manse, but the language in the material we've seen so far, which hasn't been codified, is anything that's subject to source deductions, and say a manse is subject to at least EI.
Okay. Next question. This 10% subsidy, do we need to contact ADP, each congregation, or are you doing that for us? How's that going to work? You had talked last week about the possibility that maybe ADP would do it for all of us collectively.
Yes, and ADP has the capacity to do that. There's a technical barrier, which is that they're right now it contractually says that they have to take instruction only from the local administrator. If folks send an email, every ADP administrator, or as many as want to, send an email to ADP, they can have it done automatically and get it started basically right away. If there are some,
what the wording of that email should be?
it'll be on a later slide.
Okay, perfect.
And
then let's hold it for that.
But it's also very much important to see that email.
Okay, no, excellent, thank you. Back up just a minute. You were talking about loans and requiring congregational approval and then region approval to apply for that $40,000 loan. If we can't meet face to face, how will we get a congregational meeting to apply for that?
That is certainly something that even a board, I think could do in this extraordinary time. Or there are some guidelines, I believe, for electronic meetings now, and this would certainly be one. This shouldn't be a contentious, meeting at all. So it could be done electronically, and although some people might technically argue against this, I personally think it should be done by email.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that you think it falls to the board, not to the congregation, to approve the application, and that it could be done electronically.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's the questions for now. So I'll carry on and I'll stop you again if I see more.
Great. Next slide.
That doesn't mean that there aren't more questions on my list. It's just that those seem to be the ones that are relevant to what you've been telling us about.
Right. And in any case, so here's the 10%. It was announced March 18th, and it basically, I'll go through the math, but the key thing is, this is the answer to your question, Steve. If folks get back to us and authorize the general counsel to be able to do this stuff in bulk with ADP, as opposed to each individual person having to do calculations and adjustments every single payroll, then we can do this in a bulk automated way, and basically there's income to each congregation automatically. Okay, if for whatever reason, if we don't get that authorization, or if someone for whatever reason wants to do more work, then there will be a worksheet provided and a tracking mechanism so folks can do this on their own. But I very strongly recommend, not just for this 10% thing, but likely for some future work that's coming, that everyone do this. And
any chance you could give us any chance you could give us a boilerplate email to send to ADP? Dear ADP, please do X, Y, Z. We just all sign it.
No, we've done that. The email that's gone to each ADP administrator says this is exactly what you should do. And I think quite a number of folks have already done it, and the email only went out last night. But this is not something to be suspicious of. This is a streamlining thing that will not only help us during this crisis, but has the potential to streamline troubleshooting later on, so you don't always have to sit in a payroll queue. Next slide. So the email literally went out last night, maybe around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock Eastern, something like that. And each ADP administrator needs, this is the legal part, and in fairness, ADP does need to honor their contracts and respect the privacy and the rules and stuff. So there's very specific email instructions, and all I've included here is the format of the subject line. There's a very specific email address that's provided as well, but for the purpose of this webinar, it isn't to walk through a big long email from last night. It's to tell you to pay attention to it. So next slide. So the 75%, okay, it's eligible salary for qualifying.
Hang on, sorry, before you go on to the other, just several people are saying, what about the people on their payroll who are not on ADP? Maybe they're making source deductions and so on for local employees, but they're not doing it through ADP. Then they have to apply on their own for that?
There needs to be a payroll summary somewhere. And I have found that some congregations, at least at year end, combine them.
Okay.
Okay, but it will be a problem. ADP can only work with what they've got. Okay. This is frankly another argument. You know, I know we have our reasons, but when you have multiple processes, it's going to bite us in the butt a little bit in this situation. Yes, they would have to find a way of calculating it on their own, so they could probably do both, is what I'd recommend, or just put the folks on ADP.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 75%, you know, the amounts and the limits and so on haven't changed. However, there was an announcement today that for the month of March, a 15% revenue loss would be sufficient to trigger the full 75% wage subsidy. This is huge for us. I've talked to at least a dozen folks who were very close to 30. They were in the 28 and 26 range for revenue shortfall. So automatically they're going to qualify because of the change that was announced today. Okay, next slide. I'm just going to cover the changes for a second. So this is literally from the press announcement, and I underlined the word proposed because this is subject to parliamentary approval. It will almost certainly happen, but the fact that we're waiting on parliamentary approval means it's going to be, you know, just another number of days or even weeks before this can be fully operational. So the idea is to have more flexibility. Before, the comparison was going to be March of this year versus March of last year revenue, and you either went up or down the 30% or you didn't. Now they're saying, well, hold on, you can use the current year if you want. You can look at the average of January and February and see what happened in March. Frankly, that will benefit a lot of us, I think. Okay. The funny part, though, is it goes back up to 30 for the test in April and May. So again, this is stuff that we don't need to belabor today. The most important message is if you were testing for the 30% threshold for March, which is the only data you've got, that threshold is now 15%, and the likelihood of you qualifying went up dramatically. Next slide. So I have in bright yellow there the 15%. You can't really tell there, but I actually have a line through the 30%. For March, it's 15%, and you get to compare, as I said, March 2020 to March 2019, or you could compare March 2020 to the prior, the average of the prior 2 months. Again, this is detail. The main thing is that there's a greater chance of subsidy here. Another key point was that you could exclude or include government income. So again, for a number of places, folks had government grants, or folks are asking, do you count these subsidies? When we get these subsidies, do you count them as revenue for the purpose of this test? And in both cases, the answer is no. A key point, though, is it's going to be online. So to the extent that we can get that CRA business account going, and to the extent that we can have an online banking functionality with our bank accounts, the more of that you do, the better off you are. And the minister said that today. Basically, if they can send a payment electronically, they can get it to us a lot faster, and there's no check in the mail type issue. So next slide. So this is the same as before. These are the amounts, and it doesn't cover the highest salaries, and people need to take that into account when they're figuring out how costly it might be to keep all or most of your staff on full pay during this time. Frankly, tonight we're talking about revenue. The thought is that next week we'll have a little more information about the more challenging side of what this support looks like, and whether in some situations folks could or should or might want to consider a layoff of either of lay staff in particular, who might not be allowed in the building right now, for example. But that will be an individual situation and need discussion with the region. Okay, so the wage subsidies and good news today is really what you should take away. Next slide, please. Now the loan program, now a couple of people called me to task on this as well. So this is another mea culpa. I said every congregation in the country should get one of these, because I've made a sweeping generalization that every congregation is under financial stress arising from COVID or otherwise. And a couple of folks have come back to me and said that that was an overstatement, and I accept that. There could be some folks who have sufficient financial strength that they shouldn't, this is the church-like response. They shouldn't take advantage of this program in order that there's more money for others and there's less deficit for the country and all those kinds of things. So I just want to say I exaggerated, but for any congregation that is experiencing financial distress, this is the best lifeline. This is the best preserver. It's interest-free for a significant period of time, and there's even a grant if you pay it off in time. So the CBC, I'm not saying this is true, but the CBC an hour ago said that applications open tomorrow. My banking contacts told me they're aiming for Monday, and the answer might be somewhere in between, who knows. Okay, next slide, please. So the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, this is a repeat slide. There was a number of enhancements in making this program available to all kinds of folks who might not have been eligible for it last week. So there were some enhancements today. I'm not really planning to talk about that today. I'm going to need to dig into it a little more, and I'm anticipating that we hope to have more information on it tomorrow, or I'm sorry, next week. Next slide. So we're trucking along here, and I'm hoping there'll be questions, but what could or should folks be doing now? So with the exception of any folks who aren't experiencing financial stress, I think most congregations will be wanting to apply for the interest-free loan either as soon as it's available, or maybe you'll wait till after Easter. And one of the things you'll need to have, frankly, one of the only things as a proof, is your 2019 T4 summary. That's just you're basically your summary payroll register, and that just proves that your payroll was over $50,000, which is the minimum, and less than $1 million, which at least so far is the maximum. Other than that, you're basically saying you're a charity. You're basically saying the applicant is authorized to do it, and I understand this to be money that would flow very, very quickly. And all the banks are scrambling to put together systems. And frankly, they're taking this on in a very risk-free way because the government is underwriting it or bearing all of the risk. The other thing we talked about earlier is this email that went out last night. I'd like if it was up to me, I would have found a shortcut. I would have said, let's assume that everybody approves, but you can't do that when you're dealing with a professional outside vendor. They have lawyers and they require specific instruction. So please, everyone, unless you want to do the stuff yourself for the foreseeable future, when you could have it done for you by the folks who have the most current information, please send that email authorizing ADP to take direction from general counsel staff. This also will enable you, if you're working with general counsel staff, sometimes on a problem situation, and let's face it, we have had periodic issues because of internal errors by ADP or internal errors by ourselves. Any of those cleanup situations are also facilitated if you're talking to the expert instead of just being thrown back into the ADP queue.
Eric,
Yes.
if I could jump in here for a minute on the slide that's up there right now. At the bottom, it says to set up an online capability for Service Canada Charities business account.
Oh, there are 3 different things there, but yes.
Yeah, the Service Canada is not as necessary right now. It's the CRA that we want to make sure they've got accounts for.
Yes, no, the Service Canada is actually the one for the record of employment.
That's right.
To expedite that, yes.
Which ADP usually prepares for you.
That's right. And, I'll talk about this in a second. There will be a webinar next week by ADP explaining to people how if we have to do layoffs, I mean, most treasurers in the country have never had to do one, never seen it.
Right.
So the whole challenge is, again, are there ways to speed that up? Because much to my amazement, it's the way we do it currently is a paper form with carbon in it. I haven't seen carbon in years, but apparently that's what it is.
It's there.
Yeah. Okay. So again, the online capabilities are important. And I want to thank Clyde, who just spoke, because Clyde has recorded a webinar on the subject of getting yourself set up as a representative for the church. And that might be a way to work the, to get around some of the challenges with the CRA Charities Directorate being closed right now. So next slide, please.
Just before I do that, Clyde has indeed recorded that webinar, and it will be available at United in Learning as soon as United in Learning is back up and running. We actually posted it yesterday about lunchtime. So go and have a look for it, but it's not there right now, which is very frustrating to all of us.
Yeah, and no, and again, thank you for doing that on such short notice, Clyde, and the same to the folks at ADP for the work they're going to do for us next Tuesday. So United Church Emergency Response, this is a program that these are actually 2 repeat slides. I just want to let you know what the governance side of it is. All of the details for a significant emergency loan program on the church side are being finalized right now and going to the executive of the General Counsel on the 15th. And at that point, we'll be live. We don't envision it being the immediate response vehicle. We envision it being the backstop to when some of these other things come off, or filling in where the federal programs don't respond. In any case, next slide, please. As I just said, it's intended to supplement the federal funding programs, and it too would offer interest-free funding. And frankly, one of the uses of it might be to pay off part of the interest-free loan you had before. Because frankly, digging ourselves out of this hole isn't going to happen in many cases in just a month or two. This whole pandemic is going to have some lasting effects for us. This will be something where the application form, we've got an online application form that I think will be signed off tomorrow, but certainly no later than early next week. And you would fill it in online. It would go to the region for review, and at that point, we would administer this program from the denomination office because that's where we have the infrastructure. That's where we already have, loan programs across the country. I want to just say a shout out to, you'll see more of this, but a huge thank you to the United Church Foundation board, who again convened in, with however many days notice, very few, to approve the biggest grant in their history, or for that matter, the United Church's history, to fund this, to help fund this emergency work. Moving right along, next slide, please. So that's sort of the news on the revenue side. And next week, we've got a couple of scheduled events. We have the CRA business account webinar. That's the one Clyde has done for us. And that's available online as soon as we can get back online at United in Learning. Tuesday, April 14th, the day after Easter Monday, there's going to be a webinar more or less put on. I'll kick it off a little bit with exhorting you again to send those emails with authorization. But ADP is going to do a bit of a webinar on what you would need to do locally, if that's how you want to do it for wage subsidies, and also for the more tech savvy folks, how you might speed up the record of employment process in the event of layoffs. That webinar isn't for everyone. It will be recorded, but you might want to check it out, and you can always bail if it's overly technical. And then the next 3 weeks, I anticipate doing this kind of weekly webinar with a one-page summary, because stuff is still changing and stuff still needs parliamentary approval. And more importantly, the how to apply stuff will be firmed up. By next week, we will know exactly what the emergency loan program looks like, because Clyde and I will have applied for it. Okay, we'll know maybe more about what the process is going to be for the 75% wage subsidy. And if you folks get your emails in authorizing us, we'll be firing up the 10% subsidy. So we're taking that off of every payroll, and it would be basically anything that doesn't go to the government there stays in your bank account, which is really a grant to each pastoral charge. So a lot of stuff still happening, but we wanted to get to you this week with the revenue side. I think I might have one or two more slides. Let's see. Yeah, so the contacts, again, you'll notice I've deleted the one that said, let's do all this stuff to try to get extra loans locally. That didn't work, so it's come off the list. We have had about 80 requests now to be taken off of pre-authorized payment for assessments. If you request it, it's an automatic approval. We're not questioning it in any way. We've had about, I think it's up over $30,000 a month that in loan payments that people are now deferring. So again, that's a help. That's probably about a dozen or 15 congregations that have gone that route. And various congregations are having some success with e-payment and e-transfer and asking folks to respond, even though times are challenging and people are fearful. So there's the contacts for all those situations. And as we also next week, we'll have the details and I think even launch the church side program. Again, any kind of emergency loan possibility, or if you are contemplating layoffs, we are directing folks to consult with the region. So I don't know if we have some more questions in the chat box, let's see if we can, I'm seeing a few different things.
Sure. Let me see what I can do to kind of summarize some of them. Easy question about the ADP webinar. Is it going to be on the United Church YouTube channel? I hope so, but we're still negotiating with them exactly how we're going to do it. And the last word I had from them was about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we will know within a day.
Yeah, and I have said make it so that this is what we're comfortable using. And if for whatever reason we continue to have technical difficulties, then we'll switch to their Cisco WebEx.
See, and that's the difference between you and me, is that I have to say please and you just say make
Nope.
it so. And just to underline question about contract employees and if we were to lay them off, how does the process look? And what I'm seeing you say here is that you want to make sure that people check with their regional councils because probably the rules are different in different provinces.
Yeah, correct? Every region has got legally vetted documentation should that kind of thing become necessary. And it makes a difference whether there's an actual contract, whether someone, or frankly, whether they're on payroll or not. And, the one takeaway I have tonight is that I've always assumed that if you had some people on ADP and some not, that at least at the end of the year, the treasurer had to, combine the two. And I've been hearing that might not be the case. So there'll be a little complexity there.
That makes sense. And I mean, part of the struggle across the church is that we organize ourselves so differently in different places. So that makes sense. Somebody sent the email off to ADP last night. They haven't received a confirmation. Should they be worried or should they just assume it went through?
They should, I think they should assume it went through. If you wanted to test that, I certainly don't want to hear from everybody. But whoever that is, if you wanted to flip me an email, I'll have ADP look on an exception basis. But I don't think it's going to be confirmations.
Eric, I can tell you, I filed a number of them today for different churches, and in every case, once the email was sent through, an automatic reply came back saying that they had it.
Okay, thank you for that. There, see, this is why we need Clyde here doing the real work while I talk about it.
Absolutely. And so, and I would say, before you whine at ADP that they just sent it to you, just double check your junk folder, make sure that it didn't happen to go there by mistake.
Absolutely.
Sometimes our email programs get a little overzealous about what they think might be spam.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing for the email we sent last night. We observe all the right protocols for anti-spam and so on, and presumably folks get our emails, but check your spam folder for what we sent last night as well.
A couple of people have asked about this email from ADP. Should they put their own church company code or the one UCC code that was in the email? What do they expect?
In the subject line for sure, it needs to be their own church code, the way I laid it out on the slide.
It's also supposed to be the church code in beside Eileen Day's name too.
Okay, both places. So the one UCC was an example, and you're supposed to replace the one UCC in each place with the code that's specific to your congregation. Thank you. Is there a deadline for applying for the wage subsidy or loan?
No, and that applies even to the 10%. There's not a use it or lose it thing. It's going to be calculated off the eligibility period, so the maximums. But worst case, you could be doing this over the summer, even though the subsidy applies for the months March through into June.
Okay, thank you. Several people discussing the CEBA $40,000 loan, continuing to be anxious about who gives approval, and is it the trustees, is it the board, is it the congregation, how does that work? Can you just acknowledge again where the congregational approval lies and before it goes to region for us?
Yeah, I have some information on this, I think, on the website, but in short, we shouldn't get twisted in knots about this. The normal approval for a loan is typically initiated by the congregation, and typically it's the trustees who with any legal request from the congregation, would initiate the transaction and sign off. What I would stress through all of this is if you think it's remotely contentious, then make sure you consult as broadly as you need to. But it's, we shouldn't let our procedures get in the way of acting in a prompt fashion here. The whole church is trying to move way faster than it has. So yes, the congregation should ask, yes, the trustee should sign, yes, the most important is that the region should sign off. We can backfill those approvals later if that's what you want, when a congregation can actually meet face to face. I'm doing a lot of retroactive stuff with my own congregation where we're approving something by email and ratifying it whenever it is we're going to meet.
Well, and one of the questions I've been asked is whether we need to have a webinar on governance procedures during this time. And so
I'm busy that day, but I could arrange it.
Some people would think it's pulling teeth just to come to yours, Eric.
There you go.
But they're exciting for other folks, and so that's on the list of potential webinars coming forward. So with this TWSE, golly, that's alphabet soup to me. Charges still do the calculation and submit those to ADP, or ADP does it themselves? What kind of work do we need to do? Seems to me you said if we send this thing to ADP, then they'll just process it for us and we don't have to pick up a calculator. Is that right?
Yeah. For the 10, let me see, am I still muted? There we go. If for the 10%, ADP will do 100% of it. It's a calculation where you reduce, when you're processing the payroll, instead of sending all the money to the government, you're basically you're going to adjust for the fact that the congregation gets to keep some. So for the 10%, there's a nice clear-cut approach. For the 75%, we don't know yet just what ADP's involvement would be, because a 75% subsidy would be way more than the tax, on a normal payroll. So there's going to need to be some mechanism where the government sends our pastoral charges the money back. So we don't know exactly how it's going to work for the 75%. That's why I'm telling everyone, do the 10, because it could take a little while for the 75 to shake out if you're eligible.
There was one question tied into that, Eric, about the actual accounting function in there. And I think that's something we could outline a brief way of handling the accounting in one of the one-pagers when we're finished here.
Oh, absolutely. And you've actually done that for me on a prior webinar, where this, to the extent you don't send all your payroll obligations to the government, to the extent that there's some of it being held back, that would be coded as a government grant. Yeah. Now, a good friend of mine has a question on here, so I'm going to answer his question and say, hi, Rob Stapleford. I wore this shirt because Rob told me the black shirts are boring. And Rob is asking that regional approval is required for the 40K loan. And yes, it is, Rob, because there may be situations where that's perceived to be taking on a burden that might not be manageable. But certainly in your situation, frankly, it's a rubber stamp. And I believe that property commissions and so on will be taking, we'll certainly try to expedite the approvals. My understanding is that the regions are setting up to make sure that happens quickly by email, not having to wait till the 4th Tuesday of the month when some church group gathers or used to gather face to face.
Thanks. So you've been talking a lot about congregations. What about camps? Are they eligible for this 40 grand loan as well?
The camp, as long, I explained pastoral charge. A camp, as long as it's a nonprofit, it doesn't even have to have charitable status to apply for, as long as it has the payroll in 2019 of over $50,000. I understand it to be eligible, and I'm sure it will be.
Starting to run out of questions, friends. I've got a few more on my list, but if you've got questions that are broad strokes, now's the time to ask them. If you've got questions that are specific to your own situation, yeah, 500 people don't need to hear the answer to that. But if you've got questions about how we all need to cope, this is the time to add them and put them in the chat right now, and we'll make sure we pose them to Eric before the end of the program. There were a bunch at the beginning, Eric, about Alberta-specific stuff and how long a layoff can be. A temporary layoff can't be more than 2 months, and who does the benefits get paid by and stuff. Is this something you want to deal with on a national webinar, or should we ask these Alberta folks to talk to the regional council?
Well, they should certainly talk to the regional folks, because frankly, provincial stuff is changing by the week as well. And so I'm not sure of the interplay. I do know that the federal benefit for the 16 weeks is like a super quick, it's almost like a guaranteed income supplement, in the sense that they're just trying to pump it out to as many people as possible. And I would think that Alberta would want that to work for them too, but they should check for any specific constraints.
Mm-hmm. And in assessing that revenue decrease, are we looking at sort of 1st to the 31st of March, or 15 March to 14 April? What's the bracket that they're looking for to measure that drop?
Yeah, if you go to the United Church COVID-19 page that I flagged earlier in the presentation, or if you go to any of the government sites, there's specific charts that show how that works, and it is intended to be the full month of revenue, even though the effective dates are sort of wonky and in the middle of the month, but it is intended to look at full months.
Thank you. People are finding that one UCC code confusing, where they have to put in their own pastoral charge code and where they should put that example code. What I think I heard you say is that one UCC code should be replaced everywhere with the pastoral charge specific one. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's I believe that for Clyde to answer. I think he's filed a number of those successfully today.
Okay,
Yes, it
great.
was. The one UCC is strictly an example. Your own code is to be used wherever company code is required.
And let me say that, like on some minor clarification thing, I'm going to be arguing vigorously with ADP to cut our folks some slack if the subject line is correct and the intent is correct.
I was going to suggest that to you as well.
Yeah, on the other hand, if anybody on the webinar tonight is worried, they could probably send it in twice and it'll just be double the work for ADP, right?
There you go.
And
you
make
know
sure
what?
that ADP gets what they need so that you don't get left behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally left field. I got a question about business interruption insurance. You weren't
okay.
talking about that at all, but somebody wants to know. So
No, that's fine.
What can you tell us?
I've done some work on this. This is a very hot topic in the insurance industry, because imagine if the insurance covered all the business interruption that's happened in Canada, let alone the world. I would say the chances of churches being eligible for this are virtually zero. The business interruption as contractually written was set up to be triggered by some kind of property damage or property related event. In a pandemic, there's enough sort of wriggle room that I'm almost certain that the industry won't respond to churches. If you're a camp and you're with the United Church of Canada insurance program called UCC Protect, there's actually a separate provision in there related to infectious diseases. Now, it's not intended, it's supposed to cover food poisoning and those kinds of things that might happen at a camp. No offense, folks.
I'm feeling ill.
So I have actually encouraged a couple of camps to put in a test claim, and I have the vice chair of the entire company trying to make our case. I'm still not optimistic, but in short, not a chance for congregations, and we'll keep you posted for camps.
Yeah, that was the word that daycare in my church heard too. they were not happy to hear that. Okay, so supposing somebody who died last year gives us a bequest and it comes in April, does that mean we're not eligible for the 75% wage subsidy that month?
It is revenue. There's still wriggle room. The language is extraordinary items and items related to capital. And again, I have this language in sort of frequently asked questions on the website now. But we could start to say that's an extraordinary item, but for a church, it frankly is just a relatively unusual item, and it's normally just booked as revenue.
Okay.
With the CRA. In fact, the CRA wouldn't even know about a bequest unless it was an endowment and called a 10-year gift. So I'm betting that the interpretation would be that would be regular revenue, and it's still nice to receive a significant chunk of money. You're just receiving it in a different way rather than a wage subsidy. So
we might just ask the lawyer who's managing the estate to hold that check for 3 months.
I did not say that.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, and in fact, in fact, let me actually make that point for folks. I have had a few people ask whether, should I be doing a special appeal? If an unintended consequence of that would be that I might blow up my ratios and not be eligible for certain compensation. And my answer to that is, of all the places where we try to do the right thing consistently, it's got to be church. And there's going to be lots of places where folks are out of work and laid off and can't respond. But if you're in a situation where your congregation has been able to respond, I think you should appreciate and celebrate that and not play games with revenue.
Thank you. So again, totally different question. If we end up laying off staff and they're on the ADP system, do we expect ADP to provide the record of employment, or is there some different process we need to go through there?
I'm having my adult beverage delivered here, by the way.
I'm jealous. I don't get mine until tech support has helped me with my website.
My partner chose not to be on camera today, but I've lost my train of thought. Ask that question again.
Yes, the record of employment for people
Yes.
that are being laid off. Should we look to ADP for that? Do we get it somewhere else? What's
The answer is
like that?
Yeah, there is a way to expedite it, and that's what the webinar this Tuesday is going to be about. It is just a little more complicated. Anyone who's out there that's a payroll practitioner or something, we'll offer the ability to create one online. But the old snail mail way with ADP is also available. So both options will be there.
Right.
I'm seeing a question around deadline. I'm probably not keeping up here. There isn't a deadline per se. It is certainly possible to apply for the wage subsidies, a couple of months from now. The reason I'm encouraging people to act now, and particularly on the 10%, is my assumption that generally we've hit a cash flow crunch with our buildings being closed to rental and no collection plate on Sunday. So if that isn't your circumstance, you do have time. It isn't sort of use it or lose it in the next 2 months, but eventually the government will announce a deadline.
Well, and so it's to our advantage to move quickly on this because it helps our cash flow too. We probably don't want to be sitting around twiddling our thumbs either.
Yeah. So on the, I see a number of questions on the 40,000 interest-free loan. You should check with your region quickly to see if they even want, like they might have already passed something, authorizing this as a, they just want to have a record of it as much as anything, as opposed to, a discussion. Other times there might be a more rigorous process. I can't say what the different approaches are across the country, but check quickly, even a quick email or a phone call. And right now, with as busy as those folks are, an email might get you a faster answer. It certainly would for me.
Sure. I'm not seen a lot more questions here that have sort of general application. There's a few very specific kinds of things that I think people might want to talk to their regional folks about, or maybe even just a private email to Clyde or to Eric. Anything else, folks, that is of a general nature that that all 600 of us probably would find helpful before we sign off tonight?
I'm going for a sound effect here. Okay. I do think we have one more slide, and this is something that's never been more apparent. You know, questions in closing. We literally are in the same boat in terms of the interdependency, the denomination, for example, taking on debt. And frankly, that's a fight for me right now because of all the other things we're doing. But trying to take on debt, the foundation making the biggest grant in its history, churches still sending in their M&S. We got several emails on that today, or folks that are choosing to send in their assessment. The interdependency has never been more pronounced, and I hope that's true for the sense of being one and supporting each other through a challenging time. So, Steve, maybe I could just turn it over to you to be a little more theological than that.
Yeah, you gave me lots of notice to prepare what I wanted to say about this, Eric. You told me this after we started that you wanted me to say something. And I guess for me, I want to say this work that we're doing together, as important as it is, really is a way to provide the resources so that our churches can continue to do their mission. That really, at the end of the day, we're not about trying to stay afloat. We're not about trying to keep the lights on and pay salaries. Those are all tools. That we are people of resurrection. We are moving into the holiest weekend of the year. We know that disasters happen and that that's built into our faith. And yet we are Easter people. And we gather trusting that the God who brings new life out of the ashes is with us and still has work for us to do. So all of this stuff we're doing is vital and important. And it puts in place the pieces that allow us to do the mission that God has called us to do. So as you move into this Holy Weekend, as you celebrate Maundy, Thursday, and mark Good Friday, and my goodness, we'll have lots to talk about in terms of the catastrophes that hit our world. Hold in your mind the God who brings new life even when all logic would suggest the disaster has come upon us. The God who brings new life out of the ashes, who has new mission in store for each of our churches and for our denomination as a whole. That's who we are. That's why we're working so hard to put these pieces into place. Allow that energy and that excitement to move through your work and to bring you confidence, even when logic might suggest otherwise. God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. Friends, thank you. I will get off the webinar here and go and call the tech help people who run the software underneath United in Learning, see if we can sort out what's gone wrong there. We will get the recording for this posted there as quickly as possible. Clyde's webinar has already been posted there, and so you should be able to see that, and with any luck, within an hour or two, everything will be back up the way it's supposed to be. But certainly check in tomorrow morning if you're going to go and have an adult beverage with Eric tonight. I want to say thank you to Clyde and to Eric and to Aaron, who have all been working hard behind the scenes to make sure that we didn't miss any questions and any concerns. It's amazing to have such a team to work together, and we're very grateful for this. So thank you. Friends, we're going to say goodnight. Blessings on your Easter and all of the different pieces of that celebration. And we'll gather again in the same place next Wednesday night for the next update in this remarkable soap opera. Bye for now.
Thank you. Good night.